I might have just found the coolest handheld ever, even rivaling the 3DS. This is the Anbernic RG35XXSP, which is an absolutely horrible name. This may look like an ordinary Game Boy Advance SP, but trust me, it plays so many more games than a Game Boy Advance SP, and from a variety of different generations. So that means this thing can play Game Boy games, PSP games, Nintendo DS games. It is truly a special little device. And I just want to be fully transparent. I purchased this system on my own. It was not sent to me. This video is not sponsored in any way. So all of my thoughts are how I genuinely feel about the device. I purchased this RG35XXSP for about $60, and it was on sale, which I thought was a phenomenal price. But if it's not on sale, they range between $60 to $120. It just really depends. But if you're looking for a very quick review, if you find this system for $60, I'm gonna go ahead and say pick it up. It's not perfect and it has some issues that we will discuss in this video, but overall, it is a great handheld and I have really been enjoying my few weeks with it. And if you're still here, thank you so much. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and let's hop right into the review. And I want to begin with the build quality and design of the RG35XXSP, which I'm just going to be calling it the RG35 for the remainder of this video. And like I said before, it looks exactly like a Game Boy Advance SP, but just one that was made in 2025. I love this design, and the Game Boy Advance SP was one of my favorite consoles growing up, and I have very fond memories of playing Pokemon Ruby on it when I was a little kid. And there's no way you can compare the Game Boy Advance SP to this. There are some major upgrades on this thing. For starters, it is much larger than the original Game Boy Advance SP. For me, this is a good thing. The RG35 feels great in the hands, and the extra size helps with the comfortability. Best of all, you can still play Pokemon with one hand if you are a pro like me. We also got a ton of additional buttons on the design. You get an extra set of L2 and R2 buttons on the back, and X and Y buttons inside. Also, the button that used to be on the SP to change the brightness is now the home button. We also have the power button and a reset button on the right side of the device. And on the bottom, you have an audio port and 2 micro SD card slots. These are some amazing quality of life changes from the Game Boy Advance SP. Having all these extra buttons are the reason that you can play games from the PlayStation 1 and PSP era, but we will get more into that later. The buttons feel and sound amazing on the RG35. They are so clicky, maybe even too clicky. They can actually be very loud. So if you're trying to go to bed or in a super public area, just be aware that you are going to be making a lot of noise. It's not the biggest complaint for me, but it's something that you should be aware of. The screen size has increased a lot from the original Game Boy Advance SP, and it looks absolutely stunning. The color accuracy is spot on, especially for Game Boy Advance games, and the brightness has 5 different levels. I would say the lighting is comparable to the new 3DS models, but maybe not as bright as the DS Lite. But what about portability? Well, this thing is even more portable than my 3DSs, which is an absolutely crazy thing to say because if you know my channel, I love my 3DSs because they are so portable. I can take them anywhere. But with the RG35, that has become even easier. It is so portable that it literally fits in every single pocket that I own, and nothing beats the clamshell design. I'm also happy to report that the hinges on this system are powerful and feel great. I have absolutely no worries about this thing breaking or getting loose anytime soon. It's also important to note that the RG35 has magnets on the top and the bottom of the system. So when you close it, you don't ever have to worry about it prying open on its own, like many Nintendo DS and 3DSs do after a while. I do have one minor complaint about my specific RG35. My battery pack is not fully flushed on the back of the system. I don't know if I'm capturing this on camera, but hopefully you can see it. It is slightly tilted on the left side here. I've tried unscrewing this and screwing it back on, but honestly, I cannot find the issue and it's just being so stubborn, it's not going all the way in. It's not the worst thing that could have happened to my device, but I would be lying to you if I didn't say it's a minor annoyance. Especially when I'm playing this system, I just find myself messing with it a lot. Overall though, the ergonomics of the RG35 are great and the system does feel very comfortable to use. My sessions usually last maybe an hour or 2 max, and I've never had any hand cramps at all. And I can't even say that with systems like my Switch Lite that give me issues with my hands after just 30 minutes of usage. Let's move on to the display. The RG35 has a 640 by 480 screen resolution and a 3.5 inch IPS display. This offers a full viewing angle, which is suitable and perfect for retro gaming. I have absolutely zero complaints about this screen size, and it feels right at home next to the 3DS. The pixel density and sharpness look great for 8-bit and 16-bit games, and I know I briefly mentioned the brightness before, but I wanted to mention that the highest brightness does work well outside and in very bright environments. I unfortunately did not find an auto brightness option. It seems like, at least from my understanding, there's only 5 manual options that you can change, but this isn't the biggest deal for me since I usually use manual brightness on all of my 3DSs anyways. I primarily played Game Boy Advance and Game Boy games on my RG35, so I can confirm with those games that the color palette looks absolutely amazing. I have a half-working Game Boy Advance SP, and after comparing the two, I personally think that the RG35 blows it out of the water. Another really awesome cool feature that the RG35 offers is giving you the option to change the aspect ratio of your game that you're playing. Depending on the system you choose, it gives you other options, and some of these look freaking awesome. And even though I personally just filled the screen myself, I love having the option to play in the aspect ratio that the games were intended to be in. But the reality is that when you start playing games from PlayStation 1 or PSP, you will start to see some blurriness and some stretched images. But it goes without saying, NDS games, Game Boy Color, Game Boy games, and Game Boy Advance games just look absolutely amazing, and they excel in almost every single area on the RG35. The clamshell hinges never obstructed my view or created any glare for me while using the system, and huge props to Ambernic for providing a screen protector with every one of their consoles. They did not have to do that, and it was really awesome they did, and it was super easy to install, so huge props, thank you very much. So we talked about performance just a tad bit in the last section, but I want to talk about it just a little more. Here are all the major systems that are supported on the RG35. You got the PSP, the PlayStation, Nintendo DS, Nintendo 64, the Dreamcast, the SNES, the NES, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and just a bunch of other random systems. And as mentioned before, when it comes to PlayStation 1 games and just more demanding systems in general, sometimes I do have some frame rate and stability issues, and even some crashing, but that's super rare. For example, I tried to play Grand Theft Auto in the PSP era, and it seemed to be working fine, but none of my buttons were mapped, so it was a huge headache to try to get it to work. Just keep that in mind when you're picking up this system. I think it's perfect for handheld gaming, right? Like NDS, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color games. It's absolutely perfect for that. But the caveat is that even though it does play Nintendo DS games, I personally didn't love the experience. You can change the perspective from bottom to top screen on the one screen that you have on the RG35. So it is doable to play games like Pokemon, but obviously games that require you to use the touchscreen are unplayable. So that means you can't play games like Phantom Hourglass. And if you want my personal opinion, if you're trying to play Nintendo DS games or 3DS games, just buy one of those systems. And if you're not sure what system you want to get, I made a huge comparison video about the Nintendo DS and 3DS, so you could check that video out to see which one is best for you. But I played multiple Pokemon games with my RG35, but the main reason that I was sold in the system was to play Gen 3 Pokemon. And I have to say, this is damn near the perfect Generation 3 Pokemon machine. I have played through games like Radical Red and Emerald Kaizo on my 3DS before this, but this is just so much better. When playing through Pokemon Run and Bun on my RG35, there were so many times I genuinely felt a blast of nostalgia hit me. It's important to note that a lot of ROM hacks, especially for Pokemon, don't always work on the 3DS. I think it's due to many of the ROM hacks being built to be played on emulators on PC. So for me, when I try to install games like Garbage Gold or Emerald Imperium, they did not work on any of my 3DSs or NDSs. but they work perfectly on the RG35. And when you're playing through super brutal and difficult Pokemon ROM hacks, it is very nice to have the option for save states, which of course the RG35 offers, and also the ability to restart the entire game with just a click of a button. Sadly though, I could not get the fast forwarding function to work on my RG35. I googled it, it says online that it's possible. Either I'm dumb or I really just can't find out how to make it work. A lot of people online said that it should be automatically mapped to the R2 button, but as you can see, it does not seem to work for my system. It's not the biggest deal, but if any of you online know what I am doing wrong, please put in the comments down below so I can get this to work. But regardless, all these little things are amazing options to have that you just simply don't get with the Nintendo DS or 3DS. I do want to add that I did have some audio sync issues when playing through some of the Pokemon ROM hacks, but I had some of those same exact issues when I played through those games on my 3DS, so I'm willing to admit that it might have been a game issue and not an issue with the system's emulator. I thought I would just mention it just in case. Otherwise, I think the emulation here works pretty damn well. Just be aware that if you're playing games on my PlayStation 1 or N64 that you may get a stretched image and you may have to map your buttons before you play. Let's go over the stock OS experience on the RG35. It's clean, it's simple, and it's very user-friendly. There is a lot of room for customization, but honestly, I just use what it came installed with because I'm way too lazy to figure out how to add all the other stuff. It's very simple to find the systems you want to play and look through all the games that you have installed. Mine came with like 100 games pre-installed, but like honestly, I don't know what half of them are, so I didn't really care. It was still a nice touch, so I appreciate that, but I know I'm never going to play most of those games. It doesn't come pre-installed with a lot of the games that you may be thinking about playing, so keep that in mind that you may have to find them somewhere else. But they're very easy to install. If you have put games on your 3DS, it's exactly the same thing as that. And since it comes installed with so many games, it may be a little annoying to look through the entire system library, so I just found myself favoriting all the games I was playing very often, and that just solved that problem for me entirely. You have the option to install other custom firmware to the system, but like I said, I ain't got time for all that. Again, I got this to play Pokemon. I have zero intentions to doing anything crazy or extra with it, even though you probably can. Now, we've been pretty positive throughout this entire review because I really do love the RG35, but I want to talk about the biggest issue I have with it and my major gripe, and that is the battery life. The battery life on this system, surprisingly, is not that good. It has a better battery life than my Switch, my Steam Deck, and my PlayStation Portal, but it falls short of the 3DS battery life. You might get around 8 hours of gameplay at medium or so brightness. And don't get me wrong, 8 hours is actually pretty good. But for Game Boy Advance games, I don't know. 8 hours seems kind of short. Please let me know if I'm being a little too harsh on the system, but I just feel like I should be getting a little bit more hours out of this thing if all I'm playing is Pokemon Emerald. I do like that the system goes to rest mode when you close it, but you can't leave it closed for over a day and expect it to be alive the next time that you pick it up. This is not your 3DS where it'll still have battery if you leave it closed for over a week. If you leave this thing in rest mode overnight, you will almost guaranteed lose half your battery. So balancing the battery life with my lifestyle was probably the biggest issue I had with this system. Portability, the RG35 is what I absolutely love about the system, but there was too many times where I grabbed it and went somewhere, and when I got to the place I needed to use it, it was dead. This was something that happened all the time with my Steam Deck and Switch, but it was something that very rarely happened when I would use my 3DS often, which again was one of the reasons I love them so much. But I'm not going to sit here and say it's the most atrocious battery life ever. It's really not that bad. I just wish it was better. I am happy to report that the system does charge pretty fast. About 2 hours of charge time should get you about full battery. All I would suggest is don't leave it charging overnight. The battery life already kind of sucks, so you don't want to mess with the battery that much. Just charge it for a few hours and take it off. Oh, and of course it uses USB-C, which is freaking awesome. Thank you I love this, and I wish that my 3DS also used USB-C. I love having to just bring one charger with me wherever I go, and when I would use my 3DS, I would have to bring another charger, and that was just super annoying. So yes, that is absolutely amazing about the RG35. Also, let me squeeze in the quality of the speakers in this section. They're good. I really have no complaints. I usually played with the volume pretty low anyways, and the headphone jack worked perfectly fine. I had absolutely no issues. I use these Sony headphones and they worked perfectly. So is the Anbernic RG35XXSP worth it? Well, if you get it at the same price I did, it is outstanding and it is absolutely worth it. I'm even willing to say that it is worth it at the $120 price. This is a contender for one of the most affordable ways to play Nintendo DS, Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance games right now. That is, of course, if you want a true handheld experience. Sure, a lot of these games you can play on Android phones and iPhones, which I totally understand, but for me, I love having a system in my hand. I love having real buttons, so it makes sense for me to rather get one of these than just play them on my phone. If you have older systems like the NDS or the 3DS and you're afraid to mod it, well, the RG35 is a great starting point to dip your toes into that world. And for those of you who are experienced with modding those systems, well, this is going to feel right at home with you. For me, the RG35 fulfills all of my Pokemon Generation 3 needs. And you may say, you could just play those games on your 3DSs, and you are right, but that would mean that the bottom screen is blacked out, and I have OCD, so that bothers me, and this solves that problem easily. And it gives me an excuse to buy more stuff. And there is no denying that this is now the most portable system that I own. I love having the option to take it almost anywhere, and the fact that it uses USB-C charging is just the cherry on top. And yes, I wish that the battery life was better, but truthfully, this is a problem that I've had with all of my portable gaming systems, so it really wasn't that earth-shattering for me. It is a great system, and in my opinion, totally worth the buy, especially if you are just looking at playing Pokemon. I honestly could not recommend a better device. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Is this your first time hearing about an Anbernic device? I have been covering 3DSs and Nintendo hardware for a few years now on YouTube, and I've only learned about this company a few months ago. Bunch of other systems I would just love to test out. So Anbernic, if you are watching this video, hit me up. I would love to collab and check out what else you got. But if you made it this far, thank you so much for getting here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.